My piece of advice would be definitely to not assign homework like over the weekend just randomly that we have to turn in the next day. So we all know that there's actually a point. We all know that there's actually a point.
Testing mic 2, mic 2, testing mic 2, still testing mic 2. Hello, testing mic 2, mic 2, testing, testing mic 2, testing, testing, testing mic 2, still testing, mic 2, testing.
Mic 4 will not be used tonight. No. Testing mic 5, testing mic 5, testing mic, hi. Testing mic 5.
Testing mic 6, testing microphone 6, testing mic 6. Testing mic 9, testing mic 9, mic 9. Are we good?
Might have to, she says it's a little weak, so.
Okay, testing mic 9.
Or bring it forward a little bit more.
Okay, I've got a lot of stuff here today. Okay, mic 9. Testing mic 9. Is that good?
Oh, sorry. Testing mic 11. Testing mic 11. You need more? More talking? Mic 11. I'm going to pull something off consent, and then Lois can talk about it. Okay.
Podium mic, testing podium mic, testing podium mic. Wireless mic, test the wireless mic, testing. Okay.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Nevada Unified School District Board of Trustee meeting. You might notice we're a little shorthanded tonight, but we do have a quorum, so we're going to go ahead. So if you would all please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I think I'll start out by saying that we have 3 trustees out this evening. One had an emergency work case, and the other 2 have COVID and are unable to attend for quarantine reasons. So we're going to proceed with, try to get as much work as we can tonight with the quorum that we have. So our next action is to go to our acting vice president, Trustee Diane Gasson, who will give us a report out on our closed session activities. Trustee Gasson.
So the board met this evening, and with respect to every item of business to be discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 48918C, consider for stipulated agreement student number 1000005854921. The board, as I said, met tonight, Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. The Nevada Unified School District Board of Trustees met in closed session to review the administrative hearing panel's recommendation on an expulsion of student number 10000058549. Based on the review of the panel's recommendation, Trustee Aguila made the motion to not expel. The student will be at Nova Independent Study on a stipulated agreement for the remainder of semester plus 1 full semester for the following ed code violations: 48915C3, 48915B, and 48900H. Trustee Jacobson seconded the motion. So I'll do a roll call vote. Trustee Aguila?
Aye.
Trustee Jacobson?
Aye.
I am an aye, and President Nell.
Aye.
So that would be 4 in favor, 3 absent. For item 2, with respect to every item of business to be discussed in closed session, public employees discipline, dismissal, release. The information, I think I'm missing something. It was information only. I have a number 22 for some reason on here. And then for item D, with respect to every item of business to be discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957 and Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, Barbara Frankovich, attorney for Dennis Walliver Kelly, Employees Organization, California State Employee Association, CSEA. The board gave direction.
All right, thank you. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to item 7, and item 7 is our approval of tonight's agenda. And so I'm going to ask the board for approving tonight's agenda as amended by me. I'm going to ask the board to consider that we pull discussion action item. Sorry, I forgot the number. It is F. So it would be item 14F, which is to adopt a resolution number 30, 2021 through 2022 to recognize LGBTQ plus Pride Month by flying the progress flag in the month of June. Some information has come forward. It's Mother's Day. There are a lot of students that and individuals that wanted to address this, but are still have some activities that they had to attend. And I think it's a big enough issue so that if it's okay with the rest of the board, that we could pass this measure on the 17th, or I will say bring this forward on the 17th, and then that'll be in time for the month of June deadline. So that's my amendment to tonight's agenda. Do I have a second?
Can I just clarify, you're saying so that there's time for community input because people who wanted to speak are not available today?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood.
So I have a second from trustee Gasson. So with a first and by trustee Nell second, I'll call a question to reorganize tonight's agenda by pulling item 14F and scheduling it for the 17th. Do you have a question or comment?
No, you're doing the question. So.
Sorry, all those in favor? I have 4 in favor of reorganizing the agenda and one advisory vote as well. So now were there any other agenda items that trustees wanted to move or, okay. So having done that, then we're going to go ahead and start moving ahead with item number 8, which is public comment on the consent agenda. I'm assuming we have no public comment on tonight's consent agenda. Not on the consent agenda. Okay, and then we're going to move ahead with approval of the consent agenda. But before we do that, I want the board to know that staff has asked us to pull item 15F. They would like to discuss it. So I would need a motion to approve the consent agenda without item 15F to proceed, or if you had any other items on tonight's agenda that you would like to pull.
I so move.
So I need a second to approve tonight's consent without.
Second?
Seconded by trustee Aguila. All in favor of the revised consent agenda. 4 in the affirmative, 1 advisory in the affirmative. So we will pass everything on the consent agenda with the exception of item F. And then I will ask the superintendent if this would be the appropriate time to have staff address the issue.
Yes, Lois is going to come up. It's for the tentative agreement that we have with teachers, and so she wanted to make sure she was able to talk to you about AB 1200.
If I forgot to mention to everyone going forward on the consent agenda, and I'm sure you guys figured it out, but we have an amended, I'll call it a typo because everything was in agreement. The staff report was correct, but the actual document itself, under Article 9, 1.1 regarding special day class, there was a typo that said 12. It should have said 14 like the staff report, and that's been fixed, and you have a copy on your desk. So now I will turn it over to Lois Standing, our Chief Operating Officer, Executive Financial Officer.
Something like that.
I don't know if that was a promotion or not, but
I'll take it. Whatever it is, I'll take it. So AB 1200 is the bill that long ago gave county offices oversight on school districts to make sure that we do what we need to do in the fiscal world. And one of those things is that when we have an agreement with our bargaining units, the county needs to see what the effect of that agreement is on our budget. And so this document before you, and let me tell you, it is a thing of beauty compared to what I had to deal with in Sonoma County. This conglomeration of spreadsheets is a wonderful thing and was really quite easy to work with once I understood how it worked. And just to give her a little credit, Kate Lane created this. And I'm very impressed with it. But it basically, you outline what your additional costs are and then how they're going to affect this year's budget as well as the 2 out years. And you can go through and see it just basically says it's going to take this from our fund balance. The main point being that the district has made the choice, the board has made the choice to give this increase to our unit, with this, our certificated unit. The other units will be coming forward at future meetings with reserves. It's not from our budget, our day-to-day budget, but it is from reserves that we have accumulated over the last several years. And that's what this shows, is that our reserves will be decreased over the next 3 years, but that we will still be well within our requirements. In fact, in a healthy way over. You will see one of these for our unrepresented unit next week. And then when we conclude negotiations with classified, there will be a third one showing that impact on our budget. I think that's all I had to say about it. I just wanted to make sure that people were aware of it and that it will be part of the minutes as documentation for this TA with our certificated unit.
Any additional questions or comments regarding the Marin County Public Disclosure document? I believe it's AB.
I think the only thing I wanted to add was I believe in the past it has been practice in Novato to have a separate board item for this document. That is not something, a method that I was used to, and I checked in with the county, and they were in agreement that it can just be backup for any negotiated agreement. So that's how you'll be seeing it in the future, as a document backup for whatever unit we're putting forth a raise for.
Okay. So I think the question before the board is to go ahead and move consent item 15F as amended, one by the corrected typo form on the TA, which is tentative agreement.
Yes.
And also it will include the statute AB 1200 at the same time as required by law, AB 1200 in fact. Okay, so is there any questions about that? Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion to accept the item as amended. Okay, I have a first by Trustee Gasson to accept the amended and seconded by Trustee Aguila. Those in favor are 4 in favor and 1 advisory affirmative. So the item is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that concludes our consent agenda item. Get all this business out of the way. Next is announcements by the board superintendent and our student board member. So if our student board member would like to go ahead, we are at that time.
Thank you. So I have to leave early today, but I just wanted to it's my birthday, so I have to go eat out. No. Oh my.
We're not going to sing, but happy birthday.
No, thank you. I just wanted to say, as a senior, I am really in favor of this homework policy. I think it's helpful for students who are really struggling. That's what I wanted to say before I start the announcements. And with that being said, I do have a long list, but I'll try to go as fast. So, Semana de los Niños was 2 weeks ago. We've never done this before. But we were excited to host a new and inclusive and new event, and with a bunch of activities, you know. We had Cultural Pride Day. We had Sillas Musicales, also known as musical chairs. It was hilarious to see staff versus students get pushed around. We had Feria de Comida, which we had pupusas and tacos. It was so good. And then we also had mariachis come in. The amount of students that stayed behind, and I really shouldn't say that, but the amount of students that stayed behind just to watch them perform, it was amazing. Thursday we had Loteria. We had a winner. And then Friday we had our Noche de Rumba, a casual dance with Spanish music. It was so fun. MSA had their spring dance concert in the Center of the Arts. This new building has been getting lots of views, and it's fun to see performances in new places. On Monday, May 2nd, was Rep Your Next Step for seniors, encourage seniors to show what they were going to do for college and what their plans were after high school and graduation. AP testing has been going on. So lucky I don't have any. These are so fun for students, you know. Prom ticket sales have been on sale since last week now, and they are only $65, pretty cheap. And it's at Lake Chalet in Oakland, and we are super excited for this event. And then as of this morning, our venue in Oakland, we have to have vax and test mandates, so the venue is no longer, they're no longer requiring VAC statuses or proof of negative tests. But Novato High School admin is requiring it in order for people to go, and masks are recommended, not required. Tomorrow there's a student-led admin-approved women rights protest during office hours, so anybody can go in and join. This will be at the cement stage. Wellness Week is coming up May 16th May 16th to the 20th, and we will be having a PTSA sponsored event on the 16th. Block days during office hours, wellness sessions that students can sign up, and wellness fair at lunch on the 20th. MSA Rock Band is playing at Hot Monk on the 18th at 7:30 p.m., $15 to get in, so come in and support them. End of the year Spirit Week and last rally before Memorial Day, it's coming up. Everything's been finalized. We're getting ready for that. MSA has a bunch of spring concerts, a animation festival, a cinematic film festival, arts fest, and theater showcase coming up towards the end of the month. We're super excited to support that. And last but not least, we need parents for senior breakfast, and we're just trying to hype that up since that's coming up on June 1st. Finals week is also coming up, and graduation, and then we're out, and that's it. It's a lot. It's sorry.
So, you're out of breath, but again, happy birthday, and appreciate the list. This is certainly a busy time of the year as school comes to a closure, and I hope super exciting for you as a senior, and I want you to enjoy your birthday, so take off whenever you want. Okay, so I'm going to move on to Trustee Aguila. Do you have any announcements? Okay.
Yes, thank you. I attended the CSBA Region 3 webinar that happened, and lots of topics were mentioned. We talked about CSBA's partnering with Capital Advisors to host upcoming regional workshops, both virtual and in person. Talked about the governor's May revise, talked about transportation. Trustee Gasson was there too. She asked good questions about transportation. And so the AB 2933 is being pushed by O'Donnell, and so it would provide the home to school transportation program. And so, bless you. And so, lots of good information. There's a link. I can give that to the, if you don't already have it, but lots of good information. I'm sure Diane will say more to it. I also attended the Golden Bell Committee, and that is coming up this month on May 26th. And it's going to be a new location, not at Dominican this time, but it's going to be at Redwood. So that's going to be interesting to have that new location. It's going to be great. So I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it for now.
Okay, sounds good. Trustee Jacobs.
Okay, I think the last time we had an actual board meeting was the week before we had the workshop with Dr. Mohammed, which was great. But in the interim there, I got to see Lion King, which I feel like was a really long time ago. And we don't have Mariah here today because she's directing their next play, which is Aladdin. And it was in the theater at MSA, which was beautiful and a great opportunity for people to enjoy that facility that maybe wouldn't otherwise, which is great. It's such a community gem. I had the pleasure of meeting with some NFT representatives and with some teachers regarding the homework policy on separate occasions.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Gasson.
So I did think it was quite a while since we had an update, but I only have a couple of things. I love modeling the way. I love Dr. Derby and staff when we go out to present those awards. So that was fun on Friday. Also participated in the North Marin Council PTA meeting on Friday. And as was mentioned, the CSBA session, I actually asked if they have like a regular schedule. They said they don't, because I want to make sure I don't miss those. It's always informative hearing about different things that are coming down the pike. And actually, JLAC, I think, is tomorrow morning, so I'm hoping to also participate in that. And then just want to push out information about another event. It seems like there's stuff happening at our high schools. We have Clue starting on Thursday night at 7:30. The production is Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, and Monday night, and then there's a matinee on Sunday. And you can get tickets for that at, I had it written down here, smhsclue.brownpapertickets.com. So hopefully we can get some people to attend that as well. They're doing a great job, practicing a bunch, and I'm looking forward to seeing it myself. I think that's it.
So I don't have any updates or announcements. I will have probably more to say next meeting, because tomorrow the Joint Legislative Action Committee meeting will take place, and we're anticipating final May revise of the budget, and there'll probably be, when it comes to budgets and money, that usually leads to a lot to talk about. So we'll see how that goes. Dr. Derby.
Okay, so we can make donations to school fuel for Tour of Novato through May 15th. I think so far Lou Sutton is leading, but you can donate to individuals or to school fuel. I hope we'll all be able to do that. Last Saturday was the finale of the Tour of Novato at San Marin High School, and the STEM kids and the Visual and Performing Arts kids did amazing presentations. The robotics team was there. All the STEM kids were there. Drama was there. Performing arts was there. And I just wish more community members were there to see this incredible performance of the kids. And I just want to thank the teachers that were there, Dr. B, Tim Block, Emily, Haley, and Allison. And so they're just dedicated, and we're there, all morning having their kids perform. So that was great. A Blue Ribbon is coming for a presentation on May 17th. It's been an amazing experience, and I'm hoping that many of the people that participated will be speaking as well. So you'll hear from them next week. And we already talked about Aladdin this week and Clue this week. And so I'm hoping that as we do our master calendar for next year, that we're going to have a little more spaces in when all the performances are, because they just feel like they've all just come together, and we want to make sure we get to all of them, and so sometimes it's a hard job. And I think that's it.
Right, so a lot going on. Check your local school calendar and do what you can to support our public schools. So that means we are going to move on to our next item, which is a presentation and proclamation for the North Marin Community Services 50th year anniversary. And I'm sure we have members here, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Derby to
Yes, I'm
help
going to have Cheryl and her team come up. North Marin Community Services, formerly Novato Youth Center, has been an amazing partner for as long as you've been. Yeah, right here is fine. I don't know, where do you want them, because you want to take photos?
Well,
Yeah.
I think when they're done, you guys get together up
Yeah.
here and we'll take a photo.
Okay. And so, they started just as an after-school program and childcare, and expanded their services exponentially with counseling and you name it now. And I just think that the way it's transformed, and we went to their luncheon, when, now is it 2 weeks? April 13th, thank you. April 13th. And it was just like being in Novato in the know. I mean, everybody was there that has been there historically for years and years, and Veronica was there as well. And so I think that Mary Jane probably said it best, is that when Cheryl first talked about the idea of merging the two, that she said, yeah, well, that's a really good idea, but let's see what's going to happen now, because we had all these separate groups, and Cheryl was able to bring them together. So do you want to read this to them? And we wish we had the proclamation at the luncheon. We didn't. So we're just so glad that you're here so that we can share our appreciation as a board and a community. You're fabulous partners, and we just are encouraged by all of the work we do together and will continue to do so. So thank you so much. Here, yeah. And you want to do, I mean, you're the board president, right?
No, I think it's important. I wanted to congratulate you guys on the success you've had in our community over 50 years. We talked a little bit about the history, so I can read the proclamation if you'd like. So, whereas the Nevada Youth Center and the Nevada Human Needs Center opened their doors as grassroots nonprofits led by caring community members circa 1972, and whereas over the next 50 years, founders, board members, staff, and volunteers helped launch over 25 plus programs that supported the success of 200,000 plus youth, family, and adults. And whereas in January 2018, these nonprofits merged and renamed North Marin Community Services to envision a strong community with opportunities for all. And whereas in March 2020, the organization stepped forward as an anchor human service organization serving North Marin to support people in need during the COVID-19 pandemic. And in January of 2022, the organization received the CVNL, which is the Center for Volunteer and Nonprofit Leadership's Heart of Marin Achievement in Nonprofit Excellence for their role during the pandemic. And whereas the organization's team of 378, that's made up of 63 staff and 315 volunteers, provided services to 11,000 plus people and the students of the Nevada Unified School District. This includes longtime dedicated staff members Anna Rivera, 41 years, and Ann Varner, 37 years. And whereas the organization has embraced diversity, equity, and inclusion in fulfilling all aspects of their mission, including advocating for policies and services to benefit the underserved and communities. And whereas community leaders and supporters will come together in April 2022 to celebrate their 50 years of service with the appreciation to lead sponsor Marin Community Foundation, benefactor sponsor Sutter Health, W. Bradley Electric, and other generous supporters and additional supporters. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of the Nevada Unified School District hereby commends the North Marin Community Services for its extraordinary contributions to the community and looks forward to many more years of continued service and success. And we will pass and adopt this today. So thank you guys very much. You're doing a super job.
Yeah, you do have to have a photo op.
Let's say a couple words, sure.
We'll do a photo op.
Yeah, I was gonna invite all the board members up for the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everyone. My name is Cheryl. I've been the CEO and executive director formerly before at Nevada Youth Center for 14 years, and I'm here with my colleague Vanchika, who's been our CFO for 13 years. So we really, we're a women-led organization. We're both immigrants, and we're very proud of the diversity that we've brought to the organization. In fact, we're the most diverse we've been in 50 years at our board level and our staff level, and we're just really proud of our partnership with Nevada Unified and all of the work that we together do to support youth and families. And about 1.8 million in rental assistance went through our organization. Many of those were Nevada Unified families, keeping people in homes. We have the highest number of people going through our food pantry right now with lineups down the street. And again, a lot of this outreach and partnership happens because of you and your staff and your leadership. And Leslie Benjamin is on our Novato Community Response team, so her voice is really important in all of the work. And then on a personal note, both my children went through Nevada Unified Schools, so I'm really proud of who they've come to be as adults. And so thank you, Nevada Unified, for all that you do.
Since Cheryl already talked about all our amazing work that we do, and in the partnership with Novato Unified School District, I'd just like to add, I've been a parent, and 2 boys have gone through the Novato Unified School District. Looking at Ellen there, and we were just going back, known her since the boys were in 3rd grade. long time. So thank you so much for this valuable partnership. We all make this important work happen as a team. So we are grateful to partner with the Novato Unified School District. Thank you.
Great. So,
It's a little photo op, friends. Or ours. So you want to go over here in the middle? It's a better place.
Why do we have to do this?
You are so welcome.
If we have to go, so do you.
Oh, goodness, okay.
appreciate your patience.
Come together a bit. Okay, ready? Okay, let's go. 1, 2, 3, smile. There we go. Thank you. All right, thank you so much. Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Kristen, can I say something about the?
Yeah, actually, we are still on this agenda item, 11.
Good.
And go ahead, Trustee Aguila.
I just want to say that I've had the privilege of working directly with these two wonderful ladies, and I'm a witness of all the good work that they've done for so many years. And I wanted to say I really appreciate the service that your center does, and I'm sure everybody else in the community does too. And it's such a great organization that does so much good. And I saw your video, your movie star. You saw your video of the of this organization and all the good that you guys are doing. And especially like the lady that said, with all the good food and the nutritional food that we've been given, I've lost weight. And so I thought that was great to have her in that video. But so just wanted to say thank you.
Any other comments tonight from trustees? Okay. I think it would be appropriate for us to adopt the proclamation that we just celebrated. So having said that, I'll accept a motion from Trustee Aguila, second from Trustee Jacobson. All those in favor of this wonderful community service organization. So affirmed and adopted. Thanks again to all the work that you guys do for us in Novato. Good. Appreciate it. Okay, so now we are going to move on to item 11, which is non-agenda public comment. This is a period of the meeting where public may address the Board of Trustees on items that are not on tonight's agenda. Because the items are not on the agenda, the board cannot discuss or respond to the items, but that isn't to the comments made, but that isn't because we're not listening. We will take into consideration everything that is heard, and we'll give direction to staff at a later point. We give 3 minutes per speaker, and at tonight's meeting, I have one individual who would like to address the board, and that is Kim O'Brien. And I'll have Kim introduce herself. And
good evening, Board of Education and Superintendent Derby. I came to speak about, is that better? I came to speak about flags. In front of our schools, in front of the district office, we fly the flag of our country. It represents our Constitution. We fly the state. It represents our state constitution. And it's come to my understanding that in June we're going to look at flying the pride flag. I think that it's with idea of inclusivity. While I have straight friends, gay friends, transgender friends, and family, and I support people in their choices, this is a lifestyle. Do we want to choose to put lifestyle flags with our national and our state flag? If so, in August, can we put the medical freedom flag? Because there are many people who are choosing not to be vaxxed because the shots are with that, it's not transmitting. I mean, the shots currently are not preventing transmission. So that's a lifestyle choice. And it's also a medical choice for some people. They can't do it. They're getting discriminated against, so should we do one for them? I believe the sheriffs were just let go if they're not vaccinated. So how about a month for the Blue Lives Matter? And how about Black Lives Matter? Shall we have a month for them? And then, what about the group that is for abstinence before marriage? I don't know if they have a flag, but they might like one too. So my point is our flags represent our government that we're all living under, and the pride flag is not that. And I don't think it's a good idea for us to open up a lifestyle or opinion choices to be hung on the flagpoles. I wouldn't want you to spend my tax dollar monies on it, and I think there's a lot of other people in Nevada that are going to feel that way. So as you look forward to the bond, it's something to think about. Thank you for your consideration, and have a good evening.
All right, thank you for your comments this evening. So that was our one and only non-agendized public comments. We're going to move on to item 13. This is going to be a staff report, item A, which is an update on the district's enrollment. And Lois Standing will present.
Hello again. As you well know, enrollment is the lifeblood of our district, it's our students. So at this time of year, it's especially important to keep good track of enrollment. We use it in our department for budgeting, but then HR, and I'm included, and Jan, we all sit around and figure out staffing. It's very important for figuring out staffing. So last year at this time, we were using projection figures from an outside firm. We're going a different direction this year and looking at actuals. And we've been lucky to have an IT department that has stayed on top of our student information system and kept up-to-date numbers coming at us every week with changes minute by minute, day by day. And the report that was with the with your item is from last week. We have updated numbers this week, which have added a few more students to our numbers. But I think the most important thing that I want to get across to you is this is not representing a decline from last year. At this point, we are pretty much in target with what we were last year. Now, that's not a really high number because we've been in significant decline over the last 2 years, but it's a good sign that we aren't predicting a decline this year from the year in the past. And this is a moving target. We expect that some of these students will drop as we find out they are not returning, but we also expect more students to come into the district. So this will be changing up until the very beginning of school. We will be coming up with staffing numbers very quickly. We're working with the high schools on their master schedules and looking at configurations in the elementary schools to make the best use of our staff. And then I wanted to invite Jen Larson to come up and talk to you a bit about how transfers feed into this, as well as the GATE program.
Thank you, Lois. So we just wanted to give an update on transfers at this point. We have 76 transfers into MSA currently. We have 22 going into the STEM program. We have an additional 8 that have been given for general programs, and then we have another 6 that are pending. And when we have transfers pending, that means that I haven't received their complete packets yet. So before I can approve a transfer to any one of our schools, there needs to be a packet that includes their discipline records, their attendance records, and their grade records, their transcripts. So we still have a small group that we're waiting on those papers from. But other than that, all transfers have moved through. On the flip side, we've had actually very few out. The only requests for students to leave Novato at this point to another district have been renewals, ones that are already in other districts that we've placed at other times. And then one of the things that does play in a little bit, not so much in our numbers, but in the placement and our staffing, which is intra-district transfers. At this point, the majority of intra-district transfers have been made with the exception of TK. A lot of that was our waiting on what we were going to be required to have in place before next year and in the years to follow. So at this point, we've started making those transfers. This morning, Ms. Stranding and myself were able to look at those numbers. And so we hope that by the end of the week, the majority of the transfers that we can make based on availability will be complete. So our registration and our numbers are up to date. Everything is in Aries. There will be some shifting around, no more than 2 or 3 in any one direction at any one of our schools. Did I miss anything? Oh, GATE. So GATE this year was an interesting one. We had some movement in our open house dates. So when a student is identified as GATE, they have an option. We meet with each individual family and we talk through what our different options are. We have our cluster programs and we have our self-contained program. We really want this to be a fit for the family, and so we want to give them an opportunity to visit both schools. All of them have had an opportunity to meet with their home schools program. They've also had an opportunity to hear about and talk about the Olive program, but they're all of open house until the end of this week. At this point, we've asked that they give us their best guess, their best judgment of what they will be choosing to participate in. Of the 32, I'm looking at Karen, is it 32 or 33 identified students? 33. We have responses from 28. The majority are pretty confident in their responses, and so we have a good idea of what those numbers are, but we do know that a few of them may change after that open house.
Okay, hang on, let's check with the board. Do you guys have any questions, comments? Trustee Gasson, go ahead.
So 2 questions. The first, somebody mentioned TK. Have we determined if we have enough for each side? Or there was some discussion about how that was going to work for the coming year. So has that been settled?
It has been settled for this year. So one of the requirements was, and will continue to be, to move towards TK only classrooms. Having only expanded 2 months, that meant that we were going to have very few complete TK classrooms, and we would be moving towards a regionalized program. The state has shifted to allow us to continue with combos for the next year. And so we'll be able to have as many straight TK classes as we can, but any overflow will be able to be in a TKK combo, which allows us to now have a class at each school. So that is a wonderful thing to be able to offer, which is what's allowing me to start making transfers into the schools of choice.
Okay, good, because I had a little bit of a concern that if they weren't at their neighborhood school, that might shift some of the kids who were coming into TK. So that's helpful to know.
Share that concern.
The other thing is Nova. If we've been I know that this past year we had a lot of students come into that program. So how is that looking? Are we still retaining those students, or has it been?
Enrollment has decreased and will continue to decrease for next year, which we anticipated. We have our next meeting with the California Department of Education on June 1st. That's when we anticipate we'll be hearing more about what the requirements are. Some of the students, regardless if they're required to have a program or not, will stay with us, but some may be going back to their home districts. At this point, we have in elementary a total of about 35 students, which is about half as many, maybe a little bit less than that, than we have this year, that have committed to coming back. Some are NUSD students, some are coming back from other districts.
Okay, great. And then I'm just going to mention, because the declining enrollment comes up in conversations related to a lot of things. And I had actually forwarded to the board probably a month or 2 ago. There's a document from the Public Policy Institute of California about declining enrollment in California schools. So it's not exclusive to this area. But I liked it because I think a lot of people we keep referring to birth rates, but it also talks about people transferring and that a lot of people are moving from cities like us into more rural areas. And so there's not just the lower birth rate that's affecting us, but people that are moving out of state, people coming into the state is declining. Those numbers are declining as well. But I just thought it was a better broad overview of just not saying there's just less kids. I mean, there are less kids, but there's also this movement that's creating a lot of districts to see declining enrollment throughout California.
Any other questions or comments? Then I have a couple questions, or wanted to cover a couple things. It's good news that our transfers out, the intra-district transfers out, they're just renewals and there are new students moving out. So that's positive. On the gate issue, just for purposes of explanation, cluster is and then you can redefine if I don't get this right, but essentially a cluster is attending, a gate student would attend their local elementary school, and there'd be a cluster around a specific trained instructor there. And then Olive is where we have the self-contained classroom, which is a more traditional environment that if they chose to go there, they could then be in a classroom with their peers. So did I get that right?
You got
Close
that
enough?
exactly right.
Okay.
Yes.
So I just wanted to make sure, because when we know, but maybe not everyone knows exactly what we're talking
And
about.
I think one of the important pieces that you'll start seeing again next year after COVID is making sure that our GATE cluster teachers have the same opportunities for training, professional development, and collaboration that our GATE-only teachers have. We did a lot of that prior to COVID, but the inability to be together and bring outside people into our organization has made it tough for a couple of years. So I'm excited for that.
That's good. Yeah, this agenda item is not about GATE, it's about enrollment. And it's important to point out that we're doing our best to track, identify, and predict what our enrollment's going to be next year. The school district is not funded on the number of people who enroll, but is in fact funded based on their daily average attendance during the school year. So if students don't attend school, it hurts us financially. So obviously we don't want a student to attend school who's sick or ill or has a priority other than their education for that day. But it is important that students attend class on a daily basis, not just be enrolled in the school for funding purposes. It also helps us set our staff levels and the ratio of administrators that we would have as well. So it's important information, and I appreciate you guys bringing this forward. All right, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to item 13B. This is Measure G bond update on air conditioning, affectionately known as AC, installation project at Lou Sutton, Rancho, and Novato High Schools. And we'll have Mike Willard, our Director of Facilities, report on this issue. So, Mr. Willard.
Thank you, President L. Good evening, trustees. Ellen, if I could ask for your help, I have a black screen and I can't get it to do what you do. I think you do this on purpose. Every time I come up here, it blacks out. First of all, I'd like to draw your attention to, unfortunately, we were waiting on some last-minute information, so we weren't able to get this in time for the posting for the board regular agenda. So in front of you is a package of a couple of slides we'd like to go over tonight to give you the information, and we will post this to the website by tomorrow morning. So basically, and also I'd like to introduce, I have Damian Lee from Greystone West Company here to help explain some not so good information, but one that I think you need to hear and keep you updated on what's going on. So unfortunately, with the project we have that covered the installation of air conditioning at 3 campuses, that would be Rancho, Lou Sutton, and Novato High School, we went out as a single project with that, and just recently got the pricing back, and that's what we want to cover tonight. Before I get into the details, I just want to go over what we'll cover just quickly, the background, kind of the current pricing data. I'd like to turn over to Damien to go through some comparative analysis on how that breaks down. And then like to end up with a couple options and next steps, potential next steps that we have and how we can move forward with this particular project. And then, of course, answer any questions that you all might have. So just quickly, in the background, you've approved on numerous board meetings the project to install air conditioning at those 3 sites. You also approved a project budget overall of $7 million. The construction budget of that equaled a little over $5 million. Again, that was for those 3 sites. You also approved the use of a lease-back contract mechanism. And the last decision you all made was after an evaluation process, you approved GCCI Incorporated as the best value contractor to perform this work. This is one single contract. It is 3 DSA projects because it's at 3 separate sites. We did get DSA approval at all 3 sites in different timeframes. We received the last approval on May 3rd. So all the sites are approved for DSA. Again, to recap, our overall construction estimate with Greystone West's input was just over $5 million. And unfortunately, the pricing we received on Friday was not close to that. A breakdown by site, again, we divided into 3 separate DSA projects, but it's one single contract. Rancho initially came in at 1.7 million, Lou Sutton 2.3 million. Just to compare, they're about the same size. And then Nevada High School, which is much bigger, came in at 3.4, so a total of just under 7.4 million. So we're about 2.3 million over our construction budget estimate. I would like to point out some of this pricing. The way a lease-back contract works is we have a general contractor, and they usually go out and sub out specific work. In this case, they get HVAC technicians and HVAC contractors hired as subcontractors under them to perform specialized work. In this particular instance, Rancho was one subcontractor, one we've used before, and he bid on Rancho by himself. And that's why that price is a bit different than the other two. We had other subcontractors provide pricing for those two. Unfortunately, the first question we asked was, can that guy do all the rest of them? And unfortunately, he's just large enough to handle one school over a summer. He's a pretty small company. So unfortunately, he was not able to expand the capacity to do more sites. So that's why Rancho, I think, remains at a lower price. And then moving forward, I'd like to turn over to Damien to just go into some more details and comparative analysis to give you an idea how prices have crept up a little bit over the years. Of course, we're in our current unpredictable year of construction. And then get into more details of specifically, we're going to look at the Lou Sutton project, their estimate versus the one that we have to kind of show you what areas the increases are. So, Damien?
Good evening. So, yeah, as Mike has mentioned, we've got a number of prior projects within this district shown here. I've actually managed each of these. So San Jose Middle School in 2018, a 3 schools project in 2019, Loma Verde, Linwood and Olive Elementary Schools, and then this year in 2022 we jumped to Novato High School, Lou Sutton, and Rancho are the categories that you're seeing here. In front of you in this comparative analysis is a breakdown by unit cost. Basically, this subdivides out the number of units for HVAC at each of these campuses and gets to a cost per unit. And as you can see, that's crept up steadily over the years. In our estimate for this year, we did account for inflation. We've looked at roughly 7% compounded annually, which is where you get to that 23% figure. There is the difference in the 2019 to 2022 delta. So originally, if we subdivide out the total cost at San Jose Middle School, we get to a cost per unit of $42,000. Jumping to the following year for the 3 sites projects, we jumped to just about $44,000. We did account for the inflation difference in our estimate this year and increased our estimate figure to $54,000 roughly. As you can see, our pricing for Rancho is somewhat in the neighborhood at $58,000. It is high, but again, that's based on the one subcontractor that did bid that project somewhat favorably. For the other sites, you can see a massive disparity there. It jumps to $81,000 a piece per unit, which is an 85% difference. We attribute this to limited subcontractor coverage in part. I think that's the first concern, and I think it's a conservative bid strategy by the general contractor in addition to that. And looking through some of their numbers, we have a disagreement about kind of the individual totals. And with that, I'll jump to the following sheet, kind of showing the major categories and where those disparities are occurring. So these are some selected categories which represent the larger figures in dispute here, so to say. Green represents numbers that are largely aligned between our estimate and the general contractor's figures. Red represents significant disparities. Yellow is either categories that we didn't carry or just disagree about completely. So as you can see here, demolition, HVAC equipment, those are largely aligned. HVAC labor is perhaps the largest difference here. There is a significant disparity. And again, that's largely due to subcontractor coverage there and some opportunistic bidding. As we get into rough carpentry, typically we have that kind of as a built-in figure. It's a very limited cost. There are some rooftop distribution units, but it's a very limited, it's not a significant cost. So certainly carrying $67,000 per site, we don't entirely agree with. That's not a major cost difference, but the single largest category is certainly the HVAC labor. Again, as we work our way through to fence enclosures, pretty well identical there. Electrical, we're actually higher there on our costs, but somewhat similar figures. Painting and patching and roof patching, each significant disparities there, and then bonds, fees, and allowances as we work our way through. So with that, I'll turn back to Mike.
Thanks, Damien. So as you can see, there's some areas where, again, as Damien stated, our general contractor was a bit conservative, understandably given the unknown of the craziness of this year in construction industry. And then there's a little bit of some subcontractors, I think, taking advantage of the situation where they provide some higher bids to make a little higher profit. So with all that said, what are our options? How do we move forward to try to get to where we want to get, which is we definitely want to try to get all 3 school sites done this summer. Well, first we push back to the general contractor and we asked them to go out and get more pricing from subcontractors. They are doing that now. We had given them a due date of May 17th to provide updated pricing from subcontractors. So the first option is continue with our lease back contract for all 3 sites. And we met we're meeting a couple times this week, and hopefully by Friday we get the main contractor, GCCI's updated, telling them not to be so conservative on the areas Damien just went over. And then again, by the 17th, next Tuesday, we're hoping to get updated pricing from their subcontractors. We've actually given them other subcontractors to go to, and Greystone's reached out as well to other HVAC subcontractors to see if we can get more competition. So that's our first option, and our first priority in actuality is we want to keep doing what we thought we could do. So we won't have any updated information until next Tuesday. Hopefully earlier. If we do, we'll try to get updated information to the board as soon as we do, but just to be transparent with you, we gave them a due date of next Tuesday. Another option is to continue with a partial lease-back contract, which is, as we just mentioned, Rancho is pretty much aligned. We are very confident we can get that down to just about our budget estimate, maybe just a smidge over, but very, very close. We could keep that in the lease-back contract. Sutton and Novato sites out of that and push those to the summer of 2023. We would only recommend this if we find we can absolutely not get anywhere close to our budget. Again, we won't know that till next week when we get the updated pricing. A third option is to continue again with Rancho under the lease-back contract. And instead of trying to keep the other 2 in a lease-back contract, we pull those out and we go out to separate traditional bid for Lou Sutton and Novato, again, reaching out to those HVAC contractors we talked about. This would require us to go out to bid. We'd have to get, obviously, board approval on that, which in case we might not have that for next Tuesday's meeting, we might have to take advantage of a special board meeting to do that. Timing is of the essence. But that is another option. And, of course, the last option, which we will not recommend, but an option the board has is if you really want to just take our chances next year completely, we could cancel the entire lease-back contract and then push all 3 sites to go back out in the summer of 2023. I do want to add that another approval that the board made was we went out in pre-construction services and purchased the HVAC equipment for these sites. So if we do cancel or reduce the lease-back contract, we will own the equipment, and we will find a place to store it for those units that aren't used, and they will be owner furnished for if we do push any projects to next summer. I just wanted to let the board aware of that. So I just wanted to give you updated information on where we're at. Again, unfortunately, I won't have any new news until at least next Tuesday. If any earlier, we would definitely push that out in communications with the board. And depending on when we get the information and what we get, we'll figure out the best method to come back to the board for approval or direction on how to proceed with this project. I know it's a lot of information, a lot of numbers. I apologize for all that, but we want to keep you up to date and be transparent as possible with this situation. So with that, we would love to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, time to talk about HC. So, do you guys have questions? It sounds to me like we're waiting for some additional information to come in before maybe a final decision is made, but this would be a good time to try to get any other questions answered. How it fits in big picture wise is what I'm thinking, but to the board, anyone have any comments? Okay, Trustee Jacobson.
Thank you for all the information. Thank you for outlining some possible suggested solutions. Just posing the thought, do we think it'll get any cheaper down the road? I mean, it sounds like you're alluding to some price inflation in a couple different ways, and that is definitely something that some healthy competition, which you've offered as an option, would possibly eradicate. But things like labor cost is quite possibly, well, it's definitely unknown, but it could possibly continue to rise, if not versus going up. Any thoughts around that?
I'm actually defer to Damon. He's a little closer in touch. He's been talking to all the subcontractors, if you don't mind, Damon.
Sure. So right now, we're carrying inflation in our estimates at about 7% per annum, which is certainly unprecedented in recent history. I don't think anyone could have predicted this year has gone quite the way that it has. We've tried to stay in front of that as much as we can in our numbers. The concern here, I think, is with an 85% departure over expected costs. It's well beyond what inflation might do in a year. So assuming in the best case scenario that next year corrects to normal, you get more competition at that point in time, and it would correct back to more in line with what we're seeing elsewhere and what we've seen in prior projects here, then yes, in theory, that 85% would certainly be overwhelmed. You know, you're talking about a 78% delta between inflation and that 85% overage right now. So it certainly could improve if we did push to next year. It's hard to predict at this point in time, but based on a regression to the mean, I think we would be there.
Any questions? Go ahead.
So I think you indirectly answered something, because the biggest thing on here that's an increase is the labor. I mean, everything, there's a couple other just added in things, which sounds like those could always be discussed or not come to fruition, like the rough carpentry or the paint and patch. But the biggest thing is the labor. And I know right now it's hard to find people. And I don't know where are they pulling people from? Is it through this area, or like a lot of the guys that I've had work on my house recently are actually from Yuba City and from Vacaville and other places. So is that?
So typically, there is an established construction market in this area for mechanical contractors. It starts to get less competitive the further out you go because they have to pay travel time and other things. So you do have well, I'm not going to call it a set market, and certainly people do travel. You do, for the most part, know a certain number of players. You're going to have a consistent 8 or 10 mechanical contractors that you know, and that's largely who they've gone out to already. To a degree, I think it's the way in which you ask the question. When you approach a mechanical contractor, instead of saying, will you bid this project, it's, we would like you to bid these projects. And that's what we're working on currently, is just to try and bring some additional competition in the form of getting more coverage. So largely, the labor isn't so much a factor of the market driving it as much as we think it's limited competition driving it. We only received, for all three, there was one subcontractor bid all three projects, and one subcontractor specifically bid Rancho by itself. That's where you're seeing the disparity between those two figures, is not so much a function of the labor itself as that subcontractor being somewhat opportunistic. So limited coverage and more competition, I think, is going to be of benefit here to drive those figures lower.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Trustee Jacobson, I'm going to go with Trustee Aguila. I think you had your hand up and you would first comment.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you mentioned that Rancho would be cheaper because of the contractor. Did he give a time? Like, were you able to ask if there was a timeline that he gave that he can only do it that school at that time? And can he do the more come back later or do we have the time to have him come back?
His challenge was size of his company. He's just a small operator, and I think this is his only job for the summer. School. He just doesn't have the capacity. I mean, it could come back in the fall, but we wouldn't do this project while school's in. It's very, very disruptive, and it would be a catastrophe, in my opinion, to try to do this while you're teaching school.
You can't do it while the kids are in school.
We've thought about that. We've actually looked at a couple different options, but it's just so disruptive, and based on some guidance from school sites, it wouldn't be fair to the teachers and staff and the students, of course. And we tried. We've looked at many different options.
Okay,
we tried to maximize this one subcontractor as much as possible.
Just wanted to make sure that was looked at.
Yeah, no,
Thank
great
you.
question.
Thank you.
Trustee Jacobson.
Can we add a staff report about this to our meeting next week so that we at least know what happens based on whatever guidance we give today? I know you're going to get it last minute, but.
Sure. We work for you, so if we get information sooner, we'll try to set up and we'll work through the superintendent to see what the best avenue is to update the board. As I mentioned, time is of the essence, and we're trying to get this done to maximize our very short summer construction season. I do know that the next couple of board meetings are chock-a-block full, and I know Superintendent Derby's not looking at me on purpose because I'm adding to that workload. But absolutely, as soon as we get information, we'll figure out the best method to update the board.
I just want to say that, you guys know this matter is close to my heart, but I also think it's sad that Lou Sutton's our last elementary school that doesn't have air conditioning. It's looked at in many ways, some of which feel inequitable. But I also know that an 80% markup is not something that I can, as a person that works in finance, get behind. So I know that we can't just move forward anyway and throw the money up in the air. So I appreciate the options. This is a hard decision, I think.
Probably just a couple of quick, well, maybe not quick, but equipment status. It's ordered, it's on its way, expected to be here in time, I guess. But
correct. Yeah, it's already begun arriving, actually.
Okay, so it's on the subject of time. When is it too late for us to decide what to do? The current bids that we have that are high, do they expire at a certain point, or will we run out of summer days? What we got to pull?
I think the biggest challenge is going to be the schedule. Roughly, it's while the kids are gone, I'd have to evaluate this district specifically, but typically you expect about 46 working days, which is really quite tight to do this amount of work. So we want to maximize the schedule to certainly get as much work done while the kids are away and then be operational by the time they return in the fall. And then the other challenge with that is a function of overtime beyond that to do work while the kids are out if work does lag beyond the start of the year.
Okay. And then perhaps from a bigger perspective, from a contingency basis, can we afford this? That 80% is a lot percentage-wise, but 80% of $5 is not a big deal, but 80% of $5 million might be. But at the same time, I want to just make sure we're talking about what the delay would have on students and other issues, and I'm not sure that that's a question you guys should answer, but I'm just trying to imagine, we have a commitment, there'd be another year, planet's not getting any cooler, and I think that taking the students' health and well-being into consideration is a factor, and I know we're not making that decision today, but maybe staff, if that's not your department, maybe we'll have the superintendent render an opinion on what that may or may not be if they weren't to have this air conditioning for. This is just one summer we would be theoretically skipping. We go through all this and still pay the 80% more as there's potential for that.
Obviously, I can't promise it won't happen. I would be surprised. That's just so much over. But to answer your questions in order, the funding, it is a great question. The board has approved a $7 million project fund for this project for 3 sites. If you remember, originally the $7 million was for 4 sites, and Hill is a campus we still haven't done and is not part of the $7 million. And I'm working on finding some savings from other bond projects to come back next summer to hopefully have that funded. So to answer the question about, we do not have any extra funding. The only way to get funding, should you decide to go over budget, would be for me to come back and tell you what projects you've already approved we'd have to cancel, which can be done. It's just that there's now a risk, or a repercussion, I should say, to, if you decide to go over budget, we have to find that money that's already accounted for elsewhere. And just the last part, I know Superintendent Derby could provide more information, but as a father of a senior next year at Nevada High School, I am not a popular person in my house right now. So I know firsthand what I'll be facing from my daughter and her friends of, what do you mean I get to go through my senior year with no air conditioning? Thanks, Dad.
Well, and I know there's many a class that went through Novato High without air conditioning, present tonight probably. So basically it sounds like you guys are trying, you have a few more options out there. Do you want us to favor any of these right now, or do you want to just see what you're going to do? You're going to be looking at all of them anyway, and then you're going to report back and let us know. So, and then I'm going to do that. And then, so basically the answer to my question about contingency funds and where the money would come from, if we're at a point where we're pretty much on budget, no room to go up without cutting other projects. So I think we're going to have to take that into consideration. Superintendent?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for bringing so much information to us in about 2 minutes, because we weren't planning to bring it forward till the 17th, and then when this information came forward, it became very clear that we needed to talk to you again. And so Mike and Damien, I want to thank you for that, because I know this isn't easy to put all this together, and probably Melissa too.
Oh, it's
right?
Melissa
That's what I'm going to say.
Did all the work Friday.
But I also want to say this, that this is really important work, and people were really expecting it. So if they get any information that potentially could put us to be able to do this work this summer, for me, it's worth it to have another board meeting just for this item. And so I would want to suggest that. If not, then we have the other options that they've presented are things that we would have to consider. But I think whatever information you get, Mike, and we need to receive it. And if that means we have to have a mini meeting just for Mike to share, I think that's what I would suggest.
Trustee Gasson?
So, and I do appreciate actually having this in advance, because sometimes it takes a while to kind of look through it and think through it. So I'm glad that you brought it tonight. And I would feel better that there's more than 4 of us too. So, next week or whenever I think is appropriate. It is a big deal. It's important to really think about it, especially if we do come back with the numbers still being high. But hopefully something will change and that won't be the case. But it's really helpful, all the data points that you used here and the way that you did it. I really appreciate. So thank you.
Did you have a question?
I'm wondering if we had public comment on this item?
Trustee Jacobson, thank you so much for doing my job. If we could all be patient, we do have a public comment, and I'd like to have that comment on this agenda item now from, I'm going to tear this name apart, I'm sure, but please introduce yourself when you're here. Nihad Peevler. You have 3 minutes to address the board, but take your time getting set up.
No, none taken. I was hoping somebody would do that for me. This kind of goes out the window, everything that I wrote before, because the presentation was so thorough, which I thank you for. And a lot of the comments made are a lot of comments I've made here. So I just want to make a few points. I'm the mother of a third grader at Lou Sutton. He will be a kindergartner next year. Obviously, this is very important to us. It's, in my opinion, has always been an equity issue. We really wish this would have been included in phase one. For fear of something like this happening. Nobody could predict the last couple of years and what it's done to us, like across the board, not just school finances. What I will say, and one of the points I asked about here, was the potential risk of this being more expensive. In a previous board meeting, it was used as justification to continue with other projects, the fear that it would only increase in the future and therefore take away money from other projects that were part of Measure G. And I guess we're hedging our bets here. So I ask that you take everything into consideration. My fear would be losing this altogether, which I know nobody wants, but everyone's hands are tied. I can't see. And as a parent at Lou Sutton, I will say, there are many in our community that feel that the district has deprioritized specific schools repeatedly. It's felt, it's noticed, and not just by people in the community, by prospective parents, returning parents. We feel it. So I ask you to keep that in mind when figuring this out, which I don't envy you guys having to do, but just know that we greatly appreciate it and keep little guys like this top of mind. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate your comments. Okay, so then I guess we'll just help summarize things and then move on. It sounds like we have a plan of action here, that we have some information coming forward. I think I know I speak for the board when I say if you need an additional meeting, we will have it for you. So you just have to let us know how that works and how that fits in when the time comes. And having said that, I think we'll move on, and I do want the public to know that, again, I'm certain I can speak for the board that we care about all of our schools and want to see all of our sites succeed. So that isn't a position of the board that there's inequity in that area. I think we're concerned about all our kids. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Thank you, Director Willard and Greystone West. All right, so that will bring us to item 14. We're going to move on to 14 discussion action items. Means we're going to discuss them and we may take action. Our first item is A, and we're going to review and approve board policy and administrative regulations in the 6,000 instruction series. And our Director of Ed Services, Jen Larson, will take over.
My piece of advice.
I didn't get your title right, then just blame it on my second job hours here. So go ahead.
No problem. All right. So we are here tonight for a couple of exciting topics, and this one is around homework policies. Earlier this year, you maybe have met before, Melissa Havel, who is a wonderful teacher, science department over at San Marin High School, and brought to us some concerns around the stress and anxiety that she was experiencing in her own classroom with her students, and asked that we do some research and some work on our policy. With that, Dr. Derby and myself and Director Benjamin over there has been able to visit a number of classrooms, talk to a number of staff members and parents, and from there we have this video that we'd like to share with you, and then we're going to share a little bit about what is being recommended, and you'll have an opportunity to ask some questions of myself and Ms. Havel.
Should be definitely to not assign homework like over the weekend just randomly that we have to turn in the next day. So we all know that there's actually a point to our assignments.
My piece of advice is to assign just overall less homework and make sure that the students actually know the meaning behind the assignment before getting started so that they have like motivation to do it.
My advice on homework is to have the priorities be in the classwork and the actual lessons that we're doing during school.
My advice would be to organize well with the lecture so the homework can go at least with the lecture, not just a random assignment.
My advice would be to assign less homework, but also build an understanding between the teacher and the student so they can assign the homework accordingly.
My piece of advice would be just assigning homework that matters and will actually help us learn if there is homework. But overall, just making it actually mean something rather than just busy work.
My advice would be to assign less homework, and for students that turn in late work, I feel like they shouldn't be marked down on it because a lot of times they have to prioritize other things than that work, and being marked down it's just a negative cycle.
My advice is to pick out good assignments that actually go with what we're learning.
My advice would be to just have classwork, and then whatever isn't finished in class should be homework. That way we can focus on the material and the content of our work.
My advice is to assign meaningful work instead of busy work.
My advice is to assign more homework that serves a better purpose for the future.
My advice is to assign less homework and give a better explanation of it so I'm more motivated.
My advice is unfinished classwork should be homework.
My advice is that teachers should carve out time in class for people to work on homework in any class that they need to.
Yeah, my advice would be to assign classwork, and then whatever you don't finish will be your homework.
My advice would be to accept late work so that we don't have to push other classes aside just to prioritize the ones that won't accept it.
My advice would be to have late work not be penalized so much, to understand students' commitments, and just to also have a more open line of communication between teachers and students.
My advice would be to have homework that better correlates with the lesson that we're learning, so that when we do homework, it's not just random busy work.
My advice, especially for AP classes, is to assign homework that will actually help us for the AP test and be purposeful.
My advice is that AP classes should not be given the excuse that it's an AP class to overload you with assignments. An hour of assignment a night per class is a lot.
My advice would be to make sure that AP classes are really following the AP curriculum so we don't waste $96 on a test that we're not prepared for.
My advice would be to control Google Classroom a little more so that teachers can't assign stuff when we're not taking the class, and so that they can also assign it at the beginning of class so that we don't have to worry about it after school.
My advice is to make sure that teachers are more understanding of students' time, how much they assign and how long the homework takes.
My advice would be to give students a reasonable amount of time to complete the assignments.
My advice would be to completely remove homework.
My advice is to make sure teachers are more respectful of students' time outside of school.
My advice is to assign less homework in general, and for teachers to try and think about students' mental health and their time when they assign homework.
My advice is to have less homework so students have a life outside of school.
My advice is homework should just be classwork that wasn't finished.
My advice would be to just give more meaningful homework so students can focus on other things and do better on their tests and quizzes.
I think that assignments should be weighed the same because some formats are easier to understand than others. Doesn't mean that people don't understand the material, just the format of the assignment.
I think some homework should be optional. I'm good with it.
I would say reduced work because I'm focusing so much on doing my homework other than learning in class. So I'm not even absorbing the material. I'm just trying to get my homework done.
The teachers need to keep in mind all the other homework that we have and reduce theirs, so then we're spending less time overall.
The same thing. I don't have anything else.
For people with hectic schedules like me, I don't get home till 10, they need to reduce the work because it's impossible.
Take into account that a lot of students suffer from mental illness, and so it affects their schoolwork too. I think that teachers should integrate their homework into their classes so students don't have to focus on it after school.
I think things should be graded off of effort and not it being correct or how much of it is on point.
I think that work shouldn't be as repetitive, and we should be learning stuff that we actually need in class.
I think homework shouldn't be assigned. It should just be what you didn't finish in class that day.
Actually take into consideration students' lives, because students are actually people. I know the school board doesn't think that, but we are. So maybe try to give us homework that's actually impactful and isn't just stupid busy work. Thank you.
Teachers a lot of the time say that, oh, I haven't gotten around to grading that yet because they've got 6 classes, but then they don't reciprocate that in saying that, like, they don't understand that we have 6 classes. We also have to do a ton of work, and so it becomes incredibly stressful. It should be optional.
I think a main issue with homework is communication between core classes. I think like math teachers should communicate their courses and what they're doing. There's not a significant shift in like the class material, because some geometry classes are doing dramatically more work than others. Same with science classes. They should all communicate like for general ed classes. Yeah. Don't think kids for taking the time to turn in higher quality work later.
Make homework optional, because there's students who try and students who don't try. And I know what homework benefits me the most and what doesn't. And if I had the ability to choose what I could devote my time to, that would really help me learn.
I'd like to see more variation in our homework and less repetitive questions.
To consider. And so that information paired with feedback from staff and parents is what you see before us in the draft of our updated board policy. As you may have noted, our homework board policy has not been updated since 2008. So parts of this was simply CSBA recommended or required updates. In addition to that, some of the updates that are being proposed here that are specific to the feedback that you just heard and then some are, number one, that homework is all standards aligned. There should be purpose to the homework. It should be aligned to what they're working on in class. There is some notation here about students enrolled in AP classes, that those do need to follow the AP syllabus. Not necessarily that means more work, but that the work that is assigned should be in alignment with what is in that approved syllabus. Students will receive credit for their late work to encourage that they do finish it. Important notation, it does not say full credit. They do need to receive full credit for work when they're absent. But once it becomes late work, the teacher needs to determine, and that's written as whatever is in their syllabus and that has been communicated to the parents and the families in advance. But the credit will be given in some form for late work. And then teachers shall update electronic gradebooks weekly in order to communicate. A lot of this came from our parent feedback. You heard some about communication here, but challenges with when a grade book is the primary form of communication around students' progress and their current proficiency. When those grade books aren't updated until short periods of time before grades are due, it doesn't leave families or students time to get the support they need. One of the, on the other side of that, in our AR, one of the things you'll notice is that we've added that students will also use the tools that are offered to them at school to make sure that any work they need support on or late work is done in a timely manner. So that's putting some ownership on us to have those supports, but we also need to be able to communicate regularly what they need to do. So with that, if there's anything you want to add or questions you have, Ms. Havill or myself would be happy to answer. Do you want to just add a little bit about your experience or what you've learned in this process?
Yeah, definitely. After meeting with my students and coming here and talking to you guys back in November, I shifted my entire policy in the way I teach, and I teach AP environmental science classes. So it's not that I teach pretty hard, difficult classes and changed the way I did homework, and my students really responded well to it. They actually, when they took the AP test last week, they felt very well prepared. They thought they all did really well, which I'm really excited for July to see how they do when we get those scores. But not doing the homework and just really focusing on my teaching in class has actually made my outside of class life better. Like, I actually have less work to correct now because I'm not assigning as much homework. So it's made my work-life balance very much improved, and my students feel like their work-life balance was improved as well. However, I'm still getting lots of feedback from them that in other classes they still do have a lot of homework and they're still feeling really stressed out. So I think this board policy and adopting some limits in time is going to be really important to try to balance out their school work with the other things they want to do with their time. So I think this is a really good step.
All right, so
Can you hear from them? Oh, you're here for dress code.
All of this.
Oh, this is all
so
dress.
they're very excited.
What was
to get
I
up there.
thinking? Oh, okay. Oh,
Well,
no, they do homework. Oh.
I could see they were very fascinated that they're part of a whole
well, they
separate
could have an
process.
opinion. You might want to ask
Yeah,
them
you may
something,
wanna ask
Derek.
them.
Yes.
feel free to speak
Know
up.
that some of them are from our schools and some are from charter school too. So there are
Okay,
some
great.
differences in our policies.
Okay, so trustees, what we have before us is what I would consider to be a first reading of updates to our homework and makeup work. There was definitely some discussion about timely grading and things along, which I assume if I'm going to do homework, I'm going to want it graded. Okay, so Trustee Gasson.
While you were speaking, you actually triggered a couple of thoughts. So my daughter is a freshman at San Marin, and one of the things that has been the most impactful, I think, is the change in the start time. So they don't start till 8:30. I don't know what it was before, it didn't apply to me, but she doesn't start till 8:30, and I don't pick her up till almost 4 because she actually is in STEM. So by the time she comes home, I try to get her to eat something, and then she's in theater now or whatever, but it pushed everything back so late, and then we're eating dinner, and then she's up late at night. And so I've always been an advocate of homework. I think it's important, but then looking at it as from a parent and from her perspective, she's just spent how many hours at school all day, and then she comes home, she just wants to relax a little bit, but then it just, again, the start time it wasn't significant, but it's enough that it pushes the kids into a later day too. So I think that's important in terms of when we're talking about all this. The other thing, as a parent, and I appreciate, is taking a look at the homework or having the information available, because sometimes I didn't realize that she was behind, and with everything, COVID related, we were all online more to check to see what the kids were doing. So that's helpful too, because then we know, okay, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing, or is there enough time? Do I have to cut back? Like, she was in Guys and Dolls, and she's in Clue. So she's actually not home until 10 o'clock most nights. And I'm like, okay, is this, are you keeping up with what you're doing and all of that? So it's helpful as a parent to know if we get that information so that, they're very independent and she can handle it herself. But I think it makes us all more successful having as much information as soon as we can. So thank you for those considerations.
Okay, Trustee Jacobson.
I'd like to first go on record as saying this trustee does not believe in busy work. Please send that along to those students. I think we heard some really important stuff. One thing that really stood out to me was students and teachers need to be on the same page about things. Like, that should be baseline, in my opinion. 2, the curriculum and the homework should match each other. Also seems like a no-brainer. Like, that's what we're teaching. Our job here is to teach the students, and if we're then throwing random work at them, what is that teaching them? That school day is 7.5 hours that you just referenced. That's a long day. I can understand why teachers would also feel cumbersome in a lot of grading because they've taught that long in the day. And then I also heard something around not getting the grades back in a timely fashion, but we're asking our students to do something that maybe they're not seeing reflected in their teachers, which is probably not the right message we want to give them. I'm sure that's a one-off, but whatever. I had the pleasure of listening to some teachers talk about this and have a really fantastic, robust conversation about all of this. Some of the things that were talked about were around responsibility and teaching our students how to be sort of in this world and be people that have jobs later and do things. And I think we need to really look at the line there of how do we teach them how to do what's important? And if prioritizing what not to do is what we're teaching them, that might be the wrong message. And then I also heard a lot around AP courses. And I think that maybe you could go and have some information spread to other AP class teachers who felt like they have to do homework if it's an AP class. And I think that kind of thinking might be limiting our students from learning, because when we just do things because we think we're supposed to, or that's what we've done in the past, what is really our guide? So thank you so much for bringing this to our meeting when you did in November, and thank you for doing the work to follow up about this. I'm very happy to see that this is taking shape, and I hope that we can get to a place where it's also implemented and gets some oversight. Thank you.
I would say, just to add to that, like the reflection that we've had as teachers having these discussions has been really impactful. And I think planning more time like that, like talking about our practices and figuring out how to improve our practices is a really important part of teaching. And this has actually given us a chance to do that in both our homework committee and in our department meetings. And so this is definitely something that I think we need to keep even every year, like readdressing, like what are we doing? And like, why are we doing it? And if we're preparing students for work, like their school day is already like a normal work day. Like you don't want to encourage them to take more hours of work home. Like that's not a healthy balance either. So I think, yeah, reflecting on this is a really, really important step.
Trustee Aguila.
Yeah. So thank you for bringing this to us. And I have several questions. One is, are we? I mean, I just have to ask. Are we throwing random homework out to students? This is the students' opinions. I'm just wondering if you as the staff are aware that that is indeed happening. I know that what's the past is the past, but
yeah, I think all different teachers do different things. You can't control what everybody does in every classroom.
Right.
I know in the science department, we really don't assign that much homework. We really reflect on our practice and try to get away from assigning homework. Yeah. I can't speak for all my colleagues, but in science, we spend a lot of time really figuring out what's important and trying to minimize it.
Right.
I think I can respond on a more global, a lot of our discussions around this, and I think the reason it came forward, or is important it came forward, is because we don't have a lot of consistency. And I do see a significant difference between one teacher and another, one department and another, one school and another. And so in a lot of ways this year, a lot of what we've been doing is looking at these policies and working on how do we make a more tight, a more consistent practice for ourselves as adults so that our students are experiencing us in a much more supportive and consistent way.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I just have to ask because I just want to be clear that I'm asking this question not because I don't believe the student, but it's because it was like, wow, it was an eye-opener, and I'm glad it was brought forward, and I just want to make sure it doesn't happen. My other thing is, I'm wondering, I know that when I was going to school, of course I didn't want homework, but I remember learning a lot in the classroom, but there were times where I learned a lot when I had my aha moments during homework. And so there's a balance there that, teachers are going to have to, figure out. But I'm wondering if another question is attendance, if there's a connection between attendance and, like, let's say no homework. When I was going to school, I didn't realize that not going to school was causing the funding to go down. Like, not being on the school board, you're like, oh, okay, so not going to school is making it's affecting us financially. So if we can kind of have the teachers educate the students there, like teaching that there's a correlation between homework and no homework, whatever it is, but there's the attendance element to it.
And I think you heard some of our students reference that, which is making good use of the time that we are here. If I'm engaged while I'm here and I have time built into the day when I can do my work, that is the independent, not whole class work, it's much more meaningful.
Yeah, because listening to them, it sounds like it's not that they're being lazy and saying, oh, I don't want homework. It sounds like I don't want homework, but let me have more valuable time at school. And nowhere in what I've heard tonight is I didn't pick up on any, I think I picked up more on students wanting to be in school. And so if we can kind of say, okay, no homework, but you got to be in school, and that would definitely help. And I would see a significance in the grading too.
So with that, this is our first reading, and so we are recommending either approval of these recommendations or any guidance or feedback that you would like for us to bring back in a second reading.
Okay, so good questions, and I'm trying to want to sound facetious here, but I mean, can you bring us a teacher that wants to assign irrelevant homework that doesn't match? I mean, is there anyone working for us that's going to make that claim? I mean, no. So I guess what I see this is sort of a quality control issue from my perspective, and I think we're on the right approach here. We're bringing up we got a new law passed. We have to adopt to that, and then we're going to set some policy, which means the board would like it done this way, and then there's some rules and regulations in here that sort of may actually change the way that a teacher has to instruct or do their job on a daily basis. So I would like to hear from them on the rules and regulations at some point, but obviously I'm going to make a logical argument for sensible homework assignments that are aligned with the standards, that are given enough time, and it's relevant for. So who wouldn't be for that? So I think we're taking the right steps, and I'm hoping that there'll be some more engagement on this issue going forward from the community as well as from our certificated staff, because I don't want to just pass a policy and implement some administrative rules and regs without hearing from them. But if they're not willing to participate at this level, which I don't think is the case, but is there something we can do to get some more participation from for and or against, or an explanation as to why we're hearing the things that we're hearing?
So we've had quite a bit of engagement with this, and I was able to visit all 4 secondary schools, which is where this is a primary discussion. I can certainly summarize all of those arguments for and against, and I can do that in whatever format is best. I can certainly bring some advocates on. I wouldn't say that there are advocates for or against in general, but there are aspects of both that are controversial. And I'm happy to share any of those. Trustee Jacobson was able to hear some of those lively conversations that we were able to participate in. And so whatever format you would like, I can certainly give you that feedback. What I can say is that the reflection that you see there is somewhere in between the two. It is a fairly good compromise. You'll notice that we never dictated the number of hours or recommendation for the number of hours. There's recommendations to do that. There was the weekend. That is another one where we've always said that we are not going to assign anything except makeup work or finished work over a holiday. We've added weekends. There are different feelings on that, whether or not students should be doing homework over the weekends because they're not in school. We felt like allowing for unfinished, late makeup work over the weekends was a compromise. The other is, and this is something that came with COVID, and I didn't even realize was happening at the frequency that it is. Assignments that are not introduced during the school day but added to the Google Classroom or through email after the close of the day, and students are not aware that they have an assignment to look for. Problematic in 2 ways. One is it's an assignment that's never been discussed or given, and our old policy and our new policies always said the student has to have an opportunity to understand the assignment, ask questions, and be introduced to it. Obviously, that wouldn't be happening in that case. An argument could be made that they've put an introduction to it in their Google Classroom. I've summarized what has to happen. The second is we're trying to support our students' mental wellness and asking them to log off of their devices and take some time away. And I saw more of this than I thought I would. There is such a level of anxiety that they have to have their phones and their devices on because they're afraid that someone might post something that's due the next day. And so that was another very controversial debate in primarily our high school staff. Yeah.
And I'll say that is something that happened to my daughter. Somehow I get on my watch the notifications from classes when they post, and it would be going off at 10 o'clock at night. And I don't think it was at a fault to the teachers. I think they were trying to catch up. But what it created for my daughter and some of her classmates is that, oh my gosh, there's a homework assignment I better see because I've got a plan for what is it that I'm going to be doing. And so the mental health aspect is definitely, and again, as you mentioned from COVID, because it's easy to upload stuff and it wasn't meant you have to do this now, but my daughter would see it and say, oh my gosh, I need to figure this out now. And so she would be up at late hours. And so I think that component is important to acknowledge, and I appreciate that having been included. And there was one other thing that you said, and now I've forgotten that. Anyway, I apologize, but thank you for giving us the feedback on the I know what it was, the weekend, same thing with the weekend. I like the awareness that, it needs to be assigned in class or provided, because it really throws everyone off if someone's really planning to just understand that there's not going to be something over the weekend is helpful too.
The other one that was, and we could look at the wording on this, is that the teachers will update their electronic grade book weekly. Some of that is around our educating of staff around what that could look like. Obviously, there are long-term assignments that aren't going to be put in because the project's not done yet. So those would be outstanding until they're done. There are some assignments that get turned in on Friday, and there's stacks and stacks of essays, and they're not going to get put into the grade book for a week, as long as that's communicated. But the idea being, and we can talk about if you had recommendations or thoughts, but on a regular basis each week, a student and family should have an awareness of approximately where they are in their progress. Not having an updated grade book when that is our primary form of communication around progress becomes challenging in a lot of different ways. And so that was another area where there has been a decent amount of debate. Yeah.
And we also did have lots of discussions about this. Like, you don't see everyone here, but at the school, we had a homework committee at San Marin High School made up of the principal, parents, and teachers and students. So we met, and then we would take our recommendations back to the ILT board, and then had department meetings around this and entire staff meetings talking about this. So even though they're not all here, we actually have been having this discussion ever since I started, since November, since I came here.
Well, that's certainly reaffirming to hear that. I just will continue to ask for more participation, and I'd like to hear from parents too, but having not that information, or if it doesn't come forward, it's been doing this for 19 years. I have a lot of opinions. I know what I'd like to do, and we'll be discussing it, but I look forward to improving our homework situation here in the district. So I'm going to move on, you guys. Trustee Hugo, I'd like to move on. We got more to do, so it's first reading, so just
all right.
I'm going to move on. Thank you.
I just wanted to take the opportunity that if we have a teacher here or a former teacher that would like to speak up, fine.
Well,
if not.
Yeah, I think that's up to the individual to want to participate, so we'll leave it at that. I'm going to move on to the next item, which
thank
is...
You, Melissa. Can we just say thank you, Melissa? I think
Melissa, we definitely want to say thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate you guys too taking this up.
Right, but I think what you set up, the model that you set up for talking about homework is the right one that maybe we should all do at each of our schools, because I think it's the right thing, and then everybody's voice is heard. So thank you so much.
Okay, so our next item to bring forward is review and approve board policy administrative regulation in a 5,000 series, and this has to do with dress and grooming. And Director Larson will present.
This is what we like, is when the kids are
here. It is. We love it when our students are here with us to prevent. They certainly do a better job than any of us could. They give us a lot to think about. So I have had the amazing pleasure to work with this group of students, and there are more, in partnership with Youth Leadership Institute, YLI, on our dress code policy. Our dress code has come up as something that needs a little bit of an overhaul for many years now, and numbers of groups of students have come together and made attempts at that. And at spring of last year, we determined that we really needed this to be a district-wide effort. We needed to have students working through this, and we needed to make sure that it wasn't just an opportunity to be feedback, but actually a learning opportunity where the students can walk through the entire process of a board policy. So this wonderful group of students has been meeting almost weekly since, I'm going to let them tell you the actual date. Is it October, maybe, a long time. They're going to give you the timeline. And they have done everything from learning the difference between a policy and an administrative regulation. They have read examples. They have looked at multiple samples from other districts, including our own. They have gone line by line and written. They've done ballots. They've done surveys. They learned how to use and met with thought exchange. They've met with adults, students, parents, and so they're here tonight to help me present what their findings are and present the board policy and regulation that they are proposing and have written. So with that, I'm going to let each one of these wonderful students introduce themselves. So if you want to come on over here, Walt, over there you go.
Hi, my name is Walt, and I represent Hamilton Middle School.
Come on over this way now.
My name is Rio, and I represent Novato Charter School.
Hello, my name is Liliana, and I represent Novato Charter School.
Hi, my name is Kimberly, and I represent Sinaloa Middle School.
Hi, my name is Aiden, and I represent Novato Charter School.
Right, and I didn't mention this, as though you just noticed. One of the other unique things about this process is we worked with Novato Charter School because we saw the benefit, as did they, in having a similar dress code. There's some pretty big differences between what we are currently doing, but both organizations acknowledge that there needs to be some updates, and so the idea of us coming together and doing this as one unit. There continue to be some minor changes between the two or differences between the two. The Novato Charter School presented to their staff last week and their board tomorrow night, and our students, we invited everyone to be here for tonight. So at that, I believe we have someone doing slide 1. There you go.
Hi. So for the overview of this, our dress code committee, as you know, is made up of students from all over the district, from different schools, that are here to change the dress code. Our process is we met weekly from November until now. We reviewed the old dress code, and we collected feedback from the students, staff, and parents from all the schools. And now we have created a recommendation for a new dress code.
And here's a visual timeline of our whole entire process. We learned what board policies and administration regulations are and how to update them. In December, we reviewed the current dress code for NUSD and NCS. In January, we drafted survey questions and met with thought exchange representatives. In February, we developed recruitment language and questions for focus groups. And last but not least, in March, we reviewed thought exchange and focus group data.
All right, so this is an overview for, we've all seen some thought exchange data, but this was new information for a lot of our staff and a lot of our families. And so this slide just gives you an idea of what we received in feedback. We had 448. This includes community members from NUSD and Novato Charter School. You can see with 600 thoughts and over 9,000, almost 10,000 ratings. So it was a very well-used tool. This group of students, including, and I just wanted to add, we also had even representation from all of our NUSD schools, both middle and high school. This was only a secondary group. But through this process, they were able to work with the representatives from Thought Exchange to design the questions, to interpret the data, and to determine what was all of this information telling the students.
For our student data, it was something that was reflected in the staff and the parent, is that dress code should be equal throughout both genders, and that you do hear that boys and girls want to wear whatever they want as long as it's not inappropriate. It's middle school. You hear that middle school is a time that we're exploring our own identity and that we're trying to figure out how to express ourselves, and the dress code restricts that. It makes it hard to figure out, like, you know, just life in middle school. And we also hear that it needs some work, you know, and people should be able to wear what makes them happy and comfortable.
All right, I get to talk a little bit about the staff day. Oh, there we go. The staff day. There we go. Now it's on there. The staff data was actually very reflective of the student data. The differences that you'll see in most of the comments was the amount of time that's being spent on dress code. Is this really how we need to be spending our day? And do we really want to fight whether or not a student is wearing pajamas or sweatpants? One is allowed, one is not. Are we going to fight whether or not those are athletic leggings or fashion leggings? Are these conversations, are these a good use of our time? And that came up a lot. Another one that you're going to see throughout this is the idea of gender neutrality and the idea that the dress code should not be biased to any one gender or any one specific group of students. Right now, women in particular, as you can see, are the ones that are being dress coded more regularly than the males on our campuses, and a lot of that has to do with what those rules say and do, and the styles and the clothing that are being chosen right now, and reflective of identity. And so, looking for a gender neutral, and also allowing for a student to come to school dressed in a way that is conducive to learning. Whatever that may look like for the student. Parents, same thing, should be comfortable and non-distracting. We want our students to come to school. We want them to be comfortable, and not just comfortable as in I am physically comfortable in my space, but also that they are able to be who they are in this world, in their identity. Again, one that you'll see, and we did directly address this in the policy, which is ensuring that when a student does not meet the dress code, that violation is discussed and called out privately, not publicly in front of their peers. That came up significantly in both the parent and the student data. And then culturally competent, making sure no one group is more identified or focused on in the dress code. And I think we've covered all of those. So with that, those were just the very top rated. As you saw, we had 10,000 ratings. Those were the top 4 for each one of these groups. And so Walt is going to tell us what the most significant changes are that are being recommended tonight.
So these are some of the proposed changes that we have for the new dress code policy. The first is to change the language from distracting to disruptive. The second is adding inclusive language to ensure that students are not prohibited in dressing in a manner that is consistent with their gender identity or expression, religious observance, or culture, and is not applied disproportionately to any one group of students. In addition, we would also like to add expectations that any dress code violation, notification, or corrective actions is done in private with the individual in question. Furthermore, we would like to allow the hats indoors, however, not the hoods of jackets. And last but not least, we would like the dress code to be updated based on the education code.
Thank you so much. And at this point, we would love to hear any questions, and I'm happy to also address any of some of the highlights in some of our very exciting and passionate conversations around dress code as well. I will tell you, based on what you just read there, these students engaged in some very difficult conversations and did an incredible job in their maturity and their ability to talk not just amongst themselves but with adults about some really challenging issues, not just in our schools but in our society. And so I want you all to know how proud we are of our NUSD and our charter school students to be able to tackle some of those conversations.
I agree. Okay, so Trustee Aguila, why don't you lead off here?
So first, I just like to point out that I agree with most everything that says. The pajamas, I mean, I think pajamas should be worn at home. But on the other hand, I also understand that we don't know the circumstances of where each child comes from. So I don't know if we don't know if there's not enough money at home for regular pants versus they got pajamas. So this is a public school system. It's not like it's a private school. So sorry. So in that case, we all have to pick our battles. I totally understand that if somebody comes in, see, to me, what's more important is that they come to school to learn and that they're modest. Hopefully, the parents are teaching their kids at home about modesty. I know it doesn't happen in every home, so that's where my concern is. As long as they're modest, but and safe, that a girl can run with a tank top, or and not have to worry about anything happening. So in that case, I support this. I believe I also like to encourage that we enforce the privacy rule, as far as if somebody comes in without being properly dressed, that they get told in private, not in public. So I don't know, I just said a bunch of things out there that I just threw out, and that's my opinion, and so I support it, I guess.
Would you like to go next, Fran?
Sure. Thank you guys so much. This is clearly a lot of work that was done. It was mindful, and I appreciate it so much. I'm glad that we were able to get feedback from students, parents, and teachers. I think that's super important. I will say, I at some point said to you, like, what is this dress code? My, at the time, 7-year-old daughter was shamed for wearing spaghetti straps, which is a term that is dumb, in my opinion. It's a tank top, sorry, like, she's 7, but whatever, get it. I really appreciate that you've talked about the time and the place to communicate this information to students so that it is not adversely affecting them. And I think I heard you say this is a first reading, so I just wanted to make sure that we're super clear about this and the homework of when we're bringing it back and in what format.
Yeah.
Trustee Gasson.
Yeah, when all of us are here, hopefully. So I think this is great. I appreciated how everything was presented and all the questions asked, and actually the learning that you all learned about the difference between the policy and the ARs. I mean, that took me a while myself. So, and the understanding how these things get put forward and pushed out, which kind of leads to one of my questions. What I've noticed, and probably wouldn't have recognized originally as a parent going through elementary, but knowing that there was certain policies that the school put out, and then, hearing something different elsewhere. I think one of my requests is if there's a way to do like a real short cheat sheet, and even if it's with just the 4 things that every school has consistently, that this is it and this is what we expect, because I think there is a little bit of a disconnect in what does this mean? Like, I've already heard it about the 8th grade dance of like, well, what's allowed, what's not allowed. So just getting the word out there, the information, having it available at each school site with the fundamental, this is what we're, presuming we pass this. And the other comment I have just simply goes to is it on the policy itself? Yeah, it's on the policy. There's a reference towards the bottom about if there's a violation, because I was curious. It said that on the original policy, it references the ed code or the board policy for discipline, and it's not referenced on the policy for dress and grooming. It wasn't important, but I thought, well, what does happen if you're, do you get sent home, or do you, I don't know what it was. So I think just including where the references to what does happen is great. But thank you all for coming tonight and for the work that you spent.
Can I ask a clarifying question? One of the pieces of the board policy actually requires that we post the criteria in all of our schools. Would you like to see that as a separate poster, or do you want me to make that an exhibit to bring back? Exhibit. Okay, so I'll add an exhibit for the next read of those 4.
I think just so that we, again, kind of going back to where we see the same thing, that this isn't drafted by a school site and then, I think, not intentionally, but then it becomes, well, no, you can not wear spaghetti straps, or you have that 2-inch rule comes back. And it's just a set thing that this is our policy and this is like a cheat sheet.
And do you want to be discussion, action, or on consent?
Discussion action.
Perfect. All right.
So, a couple of comments of mine. I think probably the first thing I want to say, and is the most important thing to me, is what a remarkable group of students that we have here. I'm genuinely impressed and very happy and pleased to see that we have young people take an interest in this type of thing and learn from it. And I hope you guys are going to get some kind of credit for this one way or the other towards your social studies or something. Because as my father would say, you should just be pleased with the knowledge that you've gained, and that should be your reward. But I'm hoping that you'll be rewarded in other ways. You've done a great service for the district, and I just want to make sure that that's clearly communicated to you guys. That did a terrific job. I really like the recommendations. I think they're moving us in the right direction positively. I think that. Just the idea that we're going to call it distracting instead of disruptive. There's no reason why we can't have common sense around what's appropriate and inappropriate when it comes to promoting drugs or alcohol or some other inappropriate signage on persons' clothing, etc. And then however we treat the girls, we should treat the boys. I mean, I'm certainly, if we're not going to let spaghetti straps on the girls, we're not going to let spaghetti straps on the boys. And I know that's I kind of mean it to be funny, but at the same time, if a guy's wearing a tank top, he shouldn't, and it's not allowed, then he should be asked to change. So there is and then the privately part, I think, is certainly that's a great idea. Who wants to be humiliated or made a big deal out of something? And there could be total misunderstanding. But here's my concern with this a little bit, and that is a lot of the times. These things are not so much about what the student is wearing as far as what a teacher or an administrator might be thinking. It's against the rules. So if it's against the rules, we have to practice those rules, and we have to apply discipline and or the necessary steps regardless of our own personal opinion about what you're wearing. So I just want to put that out there to say that this will help clarify, I think, that in a lot of ways, so that a teacher who might think it's perfectly fine that a 7-year-old is wearing a tank top with spaghetti straps, but it's against the rules, so she has to send the student up to the principal's office, would be an example. So that part is the part that I want to make sure through our administrative AR and regulations that we get a good education out that things have changed, and that hopefully we can get our administrators and teachers to enforce the rule, whatever it may end up being, equitably. So really, again, you guys did a great job. I know your parents are proud. So good work, and thank you very much, and we'll bring this back at the next meeting.
We love the student voices more than anything, so thank you for being here tonight.
And this is their first run. They get to do it all over again tomorrow night at charter school.
Oh, all right.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so thank you again. We're going to move on to next is item 14C, and this has to do with approval of elementary science curriculum, and Karen Fremantle is going to present.
Well, that's a hard act to follow. I know it's hard to tell me apart from them, but I'm really glad to be here with you. Good evening, trustees and Dr. Derby, for this most exciting part of the evening. Maybe it's just me that feels that way. All right, now I have to, where's present on this one? Sorry, I'm a Google Slides girl. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Okay. I am happy to be here with you tonight. This is a long time coming, this science adoption. We have spent a good few years as a group of elementary teachers looking at what we want to use for our students, for our instructional materials. I shared with you a little bit of the adoption criteria priorities that we took into consideration when we were looking at the different programs. This started in 2017. I'm going to move you right along here. In 2017 was when we first started looking at potential materials to adopt for our instructional use. Teams at that point looked at a program and spent the year piloting, came back to the district and requested that we not adopt those materials. Then the next year, teachers at schools started to look further, and then we came into COVID and things slowed down. As we came back together in 20 and 21, the committee wanted to look further. And so we went back, we requested more materials to be sent to us. We filtered through them, looked at them from several more committees, and we're still not seeing anything that really spoke to us as educators and that we felt strongly about. At that point in discussion at the different sites, we asked the science committee to go back to their sites and talk with their teachers about what they were using and what they liked and what was working for them. And they came back together as a committee with the recommendation and request from teachers that the team look more deeply at mystery science. So as a committee, we asked the mystery science team to come and present to us, to talk to us about its connection to Common Core state standards, its connection to the NGSS standards. And after those discussions, the team felt confident about the foundations that they were working from, and they piloted as a science team mystery science. As we did that, we also collected information from teachers in the district. We have a lot of teachers that are currently using this with their students, and this is just a sample of some of the feedback that we got about its connection to NGSS and how it aligns with their science standards, and also how it aligns with the science framework and with our ELD standards that we were working towards. And there was a strong feeling that it did, in fact, support those standards, and they felt comfortable with that. Another thing that we really took into consideration was ease of implementation. We know that in a packed day and in classrooms full of busy bodies, it needs to be something that feels accessible to students and the teachers. And we didn't want to purchase something that was going to feel overwhelming and remain in boxes. That's not effective. So this was another thing that we felt like we needed to consider. How accessible does this feel to teachers and to students? And they felt very much so. This was 438 lessons taught was in April. In May, I just got the report, and it was over 500 science lessons that were taught across the district. So that was exciting to see. We got lots of feedback about this and others, and it was encouraging that the teachers feel like this is a program that they can engage with, and it supports their students' learning, and that their students have good, solid interaction with the materials. We also wanted to know what they felt the strengths were and if there were any needs in this program. And you can see here that these were some of the commonalities that kept coming up. I certainly like to see that the students were highly engaged, that it leads to good classroom discussion. It leads students to be able to try things on their own, so it feels accessible that way. And then you'll see on the needs side, they talked about having materials at the ready to do their experiments and do in class, and so we have accounted for that. So with all of that, we surveyed teachers across the district. You'll just see that this gives us a representation of all those. And they came back with a recommendation that they felt strongly about recommending the adoption of Mystery Science as our NUSD science curriculum for elementary. So that's that piece. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
You guys want to ask science questions before we move on? It's okay, Trustee Gasson. Well, I was going to, we have 3 adoptions to review, and it's up to us, basically. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Do you guys want to ask questions about science? Or you want to do it all at the same time, or that's what I'm...
Well, one of them kind of, this one have questions because of the next one. So.
Because of the next one, so that's interesting. But
Well, I'll just...
Well, how about, go ahead, and then Trustee Aguila's got a question, so we're going to talk about this one.
So my first one, and it was funny, so I read this one, and then I read the other one, and then the other one triggered questions for this one.
Oh,
so
great.
my fundamental question, and I think I just don't understand. There's a comment somewhere about, at least for this program, that it's not on the, what is it called, approved list?
Yes.
So
yes.
What is the
I'm
implications of
so
that?
glad you asked. When a program is adopted by the state, it is essentially it's frozen. They cannot add, they cannot change anything. That was one of our questions to Mystery Science. Like, why are you not approved? There's so many districts using, and they said, we will never be approved by the state. We will never put in for their approval because we don't ever want to freeze our curriculum. They are continually updating. They have a system where teachers can give feedback on lessons and students can give feedback on lessons all the time. So while they're aligned very closely with the standards, they are constantly improving until they get 5-star ratings, they call it. So if they put out a lesson that supports one of the standards and teachers and students are giving it 3s and 4s and feedback as to why, they'll adjust it. Whereas if it had been adopted by the state, they would not have the freedom to do that. So that was why we felt like this was a safe bet for us and offered a strong foundation for our kids.
Okay, that's helpful. There was also, I think, mentioned in this particular one, something about the funding being frozen. So what are the implications of it not being on the approved list? There was something about how it was funded. And then I noticed that we're paying for this out of the lottery instructional materials. So is my statement not hitting you? There was something about, once approved, state adopted resources are frozen and can't be easily updated.
That's the piece that I was just explaining to you. So just the instructional materials, they can't be changed if they're put on the state list.
Okay, so I interpreted that we couldn't use certain funding for...
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're not missing a funding bucket somewhere, but we're using, because for both of them, it's coming out of the lottery instructional materials.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
And the beauty is, because it's not on the adopted list, is they can keep upgrading these and for our use.
No, I think that's great now that I understand that, but I was sort of like, we're not matching, or it's not on the approved list, why are we not doing that? And, the other thing that I noticed on the other that is not here, the contract was a little bit thinner in the sense that I don't think it mentioned professional development being included, and it was on the other. So is that significant for you guys, or is that something
They
you need?
do offer some professional development. It is not part of their adoption, but we will, as a staff, consider what we feel like will be beneficial for our students, and then look into doing that. Yeah. All right.
So Trustee Aguila.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank you for being here and waiting till so late to give your presentation. Wanted to ask you about the 44,900. Is that 1 year, just 1 year, or is that like, because I know the whole this program is for like six-year contract. So the 44,919 for the materials and supplies.
Yes.
Is that just one time?
That is a one time where each classroom will get a box of all the supplies they need to do all the experiments that they could possibly do in that year. That is what we will do as a district to get them started. Just being fiscally wise, and as teachers, we know that there's no way in a year that we're going to get to every single one of those. So what we will also give each site is a supply list, an inventory list of what's in those boxes, and then we'll just replenish what they use rather than buying a brand new box every year that may have things that aren't being used.
Yeah, I mean, I was just wondering if you think that is enough for, in your opinion, for one time.
Yeah, it comes.
And
the
it'll
box,
last the 6 years.
the supplies will last 1 year, and then again we will use funding to replenish what they use. But that gives each teacher everything they need for, I believe it's up to 30 students to do every grade level experiment that they would want to do for the year.
And then you'll come back again in a year to ask for more funding.
That will shift to a site expense. And most of the things on those inventory lists are grocery store items. So they're not big spendy items like baking soda and baggies and yarn and that kind of supplies.
Okay. And I just want to make sure that you guys will be covered, you know.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And then second, I know that you, I'm wondering about the charter school and how is the science different than what the charter school teaches? Or maybe that's another discussion, but
the charter school is going to be presenting in June, so that might be a question for them because we don't control their instructional materials.
Yeah, because they weren't mentioned, so that's why. Okay, I just like to sometimes compare, you know, what the charter school is doing versus what we're doing, and since this is something new, I'm wondering if there's any similarities or. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion.
I'm comfortable with taking the approvals on one at a time. Are you concluded on elementary science as far as presentation goes? Okay. So I appreciate the work that you have done in your group. I mean, you're very persistent. I was reading the narrative, and I know you guys worked hard on this, and sometimes it's tough to work on something and then turn it down and start all over again, and rather than just settle. So I admire that. Plus, this is a bit of a little bit different because we're going to adopt something that's not adopted by the state, and I'm thinking though they don't offer professional development. Hopefully, they'll have support services.
They do.
For you
They do offer professional development. We just get to choose whether and how and what we want that to be.
Right. So I think this, not speaking for the board entirely, but I think we're open to flexibility and not total control, because that's why curriculums get adopted a certain way and then they're locked into the 1966 curriculum because no one can agree to change it. So it's the students who suffer. So I think maybe I'm looking forward to giving this a shot. So all those in favor? We got 4 in the affirmative. So we will be adopting this elementary school science curriculum. All right.
Who was the second? Maria was the motion. Who was the second? I'm not.
Julie, I should have called out your name, but I thought you nodded, and so, okay. Appreciate that, Superintendent. Okay, so let's move on to social studies curriculum adoptions.
Just like in my classroom. All right, we're going to switch to social studies now.
Okay.
Okay. Social studies, we went through a similar process where we had a long list of adoption criteria that we wanted to see in the materials that were presented to us. We looked at several different companies. These are a few of the adoption criteria that we highlighted. We wanted to see it aligned to our social studies framework, to our Common Core and ELD standards. We wanted a culturally responsive curriculum. We wanted some technology integration. We wanted there to be opportunities across units for students to build disciplinary content knowledge, connecting history, civics, geography, and economics. We definitely wanted a current events connection for our kids. We wanted some support with differentiated scaffolding. so that we could meet the needs of all the students in our classrooms. And we wanted primary and secondary sources presented in different formats and types. Our kids are so digital now that we really wanted them to see sources presented in different ways. And there were many more that we took into consideration. This is just a few of them. So for this data, many of our teachers, again, were already using Studies Weekly. We just, over the years, have stumbled upon it and liked it. So when this adoption came up, we really wanted teachers to try an alternative. So that's why you will see here that more of our teachers piloted My World Interactive so that they could give some solid feedback in a comparative way. So that was which program they piloted, and then we had teachers as much as possible from each of the different school sites and from each grade level, so that we had a representative opinion across grades. So you will see that our teacher committee preference was for Studies Weekly. There were a few that did like My World. There were some aspects of it that they liked, but overall, by and large, they felt like Studies Weekly was a strong program. It offered our students what they needed, and I will tell you that our teachers are very hesitant to adopt anything that is textbook bound for exactly the reasons that you talked about, that it makes it challenging to update. And while Studies Weekly is on our state-approved list, so they can't change any of their content per se, they can still, because it is a consumable every year, they can update photos, they can update vocabulary as it changes, and that was important to our teachers. So this was just a little bit of feedback that our teachers gave. The students, you get 36 weeks of newspapers is how this comes. They're little foldable newspapers, and many of the teachers use the newspapers. The kids read them, they highlighted them, they circle, they cross-reference, they then cut them up, they fold them in different ways depending on what they're doing. So there's a lot of ways that they use them. They liked that the vocabulary felt up to date with our current year and events. They liked that this was a strong curriculum, but it allows teachers to tweak it to the way that they like to teach and their style. So that was another positive on that. And then this is just a sample of some of the student pages in the newspapers that they see. So you will see that they get to see some of those documents, which is great. I just had a discussion with one of my daughter's friends was over, and we were talking at dinner about how she can't read cursive. So I said, Ainsley, how are you going to read the Declaration of Independence? Like, what are you? And she's like, I'll just look it up online. So we like the exposure to these things. And then this is what it includes in the teacher's guide. So it's comprehensive for the teachers. There's a lot of supports. There's a lot of depth if they want it. They have a lot of options that they can use in teaching the lessons. And it seems to be successful and well-liked throughout the district already. And that's that. Any questions?
Trustee Gesson.
That's
all
okay.
right. No, we know you're ready.
No, I do now because of what you just said earlier. So when I saw digital, I was thinking, I actually thought it was cool because I'm like, because then it's current information. But what you just told me about the standards, that it couldn't be changed. So the digital component is just something that the kids would have access to. It's not like a living, like I was thinking it was like a living feed of information. You had the printed materials, but then you had
on the digital.
So, but the digital is going to be stagnant because it's on the state approved.
Correct.
list. Okay.
Correct. The things that are neat about the digital is that it gives the kids an opportunity to have the material read to them. It allows teachers to choose material at different lexiles, like it's the same topic, but they can choose a lexile that's appropriate to a group of readers, whether it needs to be simplified or a higher level. It connects kids to videos that support whatever they're doing. So there's a lot of great things. And then another thing that came up from the teachers that they liked was it has some functions that are similar in the assessing to what the kids might see in some of our state testing. They've tried to set it up to help the kids to be comfortable with some of the tools and how they work. So
I
there's
think that's all cool. I for some reason, because it's social science, I was like, oh, it's more, more of a
really living.
like
I wish.
Yeah, but the digital component is just like what you're saying. So
They have done a really good job of including current events. The other thing that's great about this company is they're very open to feedback from teachers and students also. So he put out his email to all of our teachers and said, we are looking for feedback always. So, and talked about some changes that they have made because of feedback. So that was another encouraging thing that we really liked.
Okay, so are we ready to adopt social studies? Okay.
Yeah.
I have a motion from Trustee Aguila, seconded by Trustee Jacobson. All those in favor? 4 and 3 absent. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
We are ready now for the NOVA adoption for grades 9 through 12.
I'm going to go ahead and share with you the adoption for NOVA. As you can imagine, this is a very different process as we have 3 teachers at NOVA. And so they have they've been challenged over the last several years because our high schools have not adopted new curriculum but have chosen to use primary sources. And in their current format, they would like to have an actual text and a digital copy of those texts so that students can be going to home and school and work a little bit more uniformly in a more traditional manner. So what they've asked is that we bring the Impact California grades 10, 11, and 12, which is the continuation of the middle school social studies curriculum that we already have. So our middle school McGraw-Hill social studies actually runs all the way through the senior year. They would like for us to adopt so that they are able to access those materials up through 12th grade. And then you'll notice similar with the same publisher, Glencoe Health and Inspire Biology and World Mythology are all from the same organization. You'll notice in the quote that there's only a recommendation, or pardon me, a desire to purchase the social studies and the Glencoe Health and the psychology, which are all from McGraw-Hill. And the reason for that is they already have pilot copies and materials for the other 2, but they aren't adopted officially yet. So they've reviewed a number of different publishers, different textbooks, and this is what they have brought forward for adoption tonight. Any questions?
Before we have any questions, I missed an opportunity. I had Ms. Fremantle presenting this as well, and I just, while you're still here, I just want you to express some appreciation for the work that you did. It's important, and didn't want you to think that we were just moving on without acknowledging your effort.
No,
so
I felt the same way, Derek.
So I
appreciate you doing that because
you switched up on us there.
We're pretty quick. We move fast.
So no, good job, you guys. Appreciate it.
The thing is, they did it in a concise way, but if you really understand the depth and breadth of the work that they completed, it's unbelievable. I'm impressed. So
I'm really happy that you adopted.
And it really has been years in the making. So there's been a lot of people on those committees over a lot of years looking at these materials. So it's exciting to be here tonight.
It's nice to be talking about what we do as opposed to some of the flags and whatever else.
I wish this is what we were doing every night.
Questions about the NOVA curriculum? If I see sort of an expansion into NOVA, what's already approved. So.
And you'll notice it is a very small quantity. We have about 10 students there at any given time in these subject areas.
So a motion to adopt.
I'll make a motion.
All right, so Trustee Aguila, you're busy tonight.
Yeah.
With your first and seconded by Trustee Jacobson. And all those in favor? We have a quorum of 4 approved, so we now have the NOVA curriculum adopted. So again, thank you guys, you and your team very much tonight. Okay, so we are going to move on to 14G on your agenda, as we are going to reschedule F. So 14G is approval of the management consulting agreement with, I love this acronym, TBWBH/P&M for our parcel tax measure consulting services for the district. And Lois Standing will present.
I'm glad you said that, so I don't have to. So this generally would have been a consent item, but we thought that Mr. Heath would be able to be here. Unfortunately, he was not. So I will be brief, but I just want to summarize that we are moving through the process to get to a parcel tax election at some point in the future. We've done a pretty intense phase one with our Blue Ribbon Parcel Tax Committee that you'll hear much more about next week. And now we're moving into another phase where Charles Heath, who I know the district has used quite a bit in the past, will help us to figure out what it is, help to form, together with the Blue Ribbon Committee recommendations, he will help us figure out how the parcel tax should be modeled, as well as get a lot of public information out. I did want to point out that this contract has been changed in a couple of ways. In the past, it was set up to just pay a flat $7,500 a month. That is not best practice on how to do a contract, so we have asked him we will be getting detailed invoices for how his time is spent. And the other piece is, with some districts, and I don't know if he did this with us in the past or not, he provided the work to get printing done, but from reading the contract, it was at an extra price. There's a markup involved. So in talking with Ellen, I believe we can do the printing ourselves and save money on that. So we have the option to go with him if that's the way it seems it should be. But we also negotiated that we have the option to just do the printing ourselves. His firm will do design, that's part of their in-house service, but we can do the actual printing of whatever it is we decide to mail out. Any questions?
Okay. Trustee Gassan had her hand up first.
So I just wanted to clarify a couple points. One, obviously, we see this, and it's based on us going out for another parcel tax measure, and we haven't, as a board, decided that or heard from the Blue Ribbon Committee. So I just wanted to.
Right, and this is work. Yes, if you decide you're not going to go out for it, yes, we would stop this.
Right.
And this contract is for work up until the time you pass a resolution to have a parcel tax, because once that happens, then it becomes outside of the district's purview, and it's the campaign committee that takes care of all the work for the campaign.
Okay, that was my second point that I was going to make. I just wanted to make sure that, having been on several of the prior committees, parcel tax committees, that we're not binding them to anything, because they will be a separate. So I just wanted to point that out as well. So I'm fine. I mean, I've enjoyed working with them and appreciate the work that they've done. But I think given that we haven't quite, we're waiting for the Blue Ribbon Committee report, and we've got four of us here. Just wanted to point those things out. So thank you.
Trustee Jacobson?
I didn't have any.
Nothing? Trustee, okay. So, very good. I trust I appreciate the extra work that you did. I reviewed the contract, and I was actually happy to see hourly rates advertised, for lack of a better term, in the event that we should be way under or way over. We would have something to go back to, and negotiating on the printing is not necessarily to say we wouldn't use them.
Correct.
But we pulled it out for the purpose of being able to handle that as an expense on our own, because it's a public entity using taxpayer dollars to communicate with our community, something that we want to be careful with. So I think that was good work, and I'm knowing this organization, I'm impressed. So good work there. As far as timing, I think, the Blue Ribbon Committees concluded their work. We've seen the preliminary reports, and we were just trying to get things off of next week's agenda and approved in this agenda. So if there aren't any other questions, I would recommend we approve the contract. So anyone want to make a motion on that? I'm happy to do it. So I will make the first motion to approve the contract, and a second by Trustee Jacobson. And all in favor? 4 in favor. And so we will see what they can do for us this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So if I haven't missed anything, I believe that was the last item on our agenda tonight. I want to thank everybody for sticking it out and getting the work done, and get ready to go to work next week as well. So we are adjourned.